The night felt wrong from the moment Emily stepped onto the quiet street. The air was too still, as if holding its breath. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Only 3 words appeared, cold and sharp. "You were warned." She froze, sensing someone watching from the shadows. A faint rustle came from behind the abandoned house. Her heartbeat quickened, pulsing in her ears. The message came again, this time with a photo. It showed her front door, taken minutes earlier. Fear crawled up her spine like ice. She turned around, searching for movement. A figure slipped out of sight at the corner. Emily stepped back, unsure if she should run. Another message arrived, louder than any sound. "Don't trust anyone tonight." Her breath hitched as a distant siren wailed. Something terrible was already unfolding, and Emily was now trapped inside it. Emily forced herself to breathe as she stepped deeper into the dim alley. The silence clung to her like a second skin. She replayed the strange messages in her mind. Each word felt heavier than the last. She tried calling her best friend Mark, but he didn't answer. His phone went straight to voicemail without a ring. She whispered his name as if it could summon him. Her footsteps echoed in uneven rhythms on the cracked pavement. A dim street lamp flickered above her like a dying heartbeat. She tightened her grip on her backpack and kept moving. The alley ended at a deserted parking lot behind an old diner. She remembered eating here with her father years ago. The place had closed after a fire no one explained. She scanned the empty lot for any sign of danger. Instead, she saw a car she recognized immediately. It was Mark's silver sedan, parked crookedly near the dumpster. His headlights were still on, faint and trembling. Emily walked toward the car with cautious steps. Her pulse thudded in her throat like a warning drum. She called out again, louder this time, hoping he'd respond. Only the hum of the engine answered her back. She reached the driver's door and peered inside. The seat was empty, but his phone lay on the floor. Its screen was cracked as if dropped in a hurry. She picked it up with trembling fingers. A notification blinked repeatedly like a distress signal. It showed the same unknown number that had messaged her. But this time, the message was different and colder. "Too late for him, keep walking." Her stomach tightened as fear twisted inside her. She backed away from the car, clutching the phone. The engine sputtered, then died in the heavy silence. Emily felt the weight of someone watching again. She turned toward the diner's back door, half open and dark. A faint scrape echoed from within, slow and deliberate. Something about the sound felt familiar yet wrong. She stepped closer despite every instinct telling her to run. Her breath fogged in the cold air as she pushed the door. It creaked open with a long metallic groan. Inside the diner, shadows clung to every corner. Tables were overturned, as if a struggle had erupted. A broken coffee mug lay shattered across the floor. Emily whispered Mark's name again, her voice trembling. This time she heard a soft reply, strained and weak. It came from somewhere deeper in the diner. She followed the sound, forcing her legs to move. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned her footsteps. She stepped into the back hallway, narrow and silent. Another whisper came, closer now and desperate. "Emily, don't come closer." She froze as the lights flickered above her. Something moved in the darkness at the end of the hall. And Emily realized the warning hadn't come from Mark. Emily's breath stalled as the whisper drifted through the hallway. It didn't sound human anymore, stretched thin like torn fabric. She stepped back, her shoes scraping lightly on the old tiles. The sound at the end of the hall grew sharper. A shadow shifted, tall and oddly bent at the shoulders. Emily gripped the wall to steady herself. The air felt colder the closer the figure moved. She tried calling Mark's name again, weaker than before. Her voice quivered as silence swallowed it whole. Then she heard a soft thud from a nearby door. It came from the old storage room beside the kitchen. The noise was rhythmic, like someone tapping a message. Emily forced her feet, toward it despite her shaking knees. Her fingers brushed the doorknob, icy and damp. She hesitated, listening for another clue. Instead, she heard hurried breathing from behind the door. She whispered gently, hopping for a reply. "Mark, is that you?" The breathing paused, then quickened with urgency. A muffled voice croaked from the other side. "Emily, don't trust the voice in the hallway." Her pulse shot through her chest in a painful burst. She pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear. The whispering figure behind her moved again. Its footsteps were slow, dragging with a scraping sound. Emily twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The storage room was dark, except for a faint red glow. It came from a small emergency light, barely hanging on the wall. Mark crouched beside a stack of broken crates. His face was pale, smeared with dust and fear. He motioned for her to shut the door quickly. She pushed it closed as the scraping footsteps drew near. Mark grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the shadows. His voice trembled as he leaned close. "You weren't supposed to come here." Emily tried to steady her breathing again. The fear in his eyes made her chest tighten. She asked him what had happened to his car. He shook his head, unable to explain everything yet. He pointed toward the door as the shadow outside paused. A slow, raspy voice seeped through the cracks. "Emily, I know you're in there." The words slithered into the room like cold smoke. Mark squeezed her hand to silence her reaction. The handle twitched as something pressed against it. Emily locked her jaw to keep herself still. The shadow lingered, listening for movement. Mark whispered so quietly she barely heard. "It followed me from the house on Ridge Street." Emily tried to understand, but her thoughts tangled. He continued with a shaky breath. "I thought it was a person at first." His eyes darted toward the trembling light. "But it's not, and it wants you too." Emily stiffened as a low growl vibrated through the hallway. The figure outside dragged its fingers across the door. The sound was slow, deliberate, and hungry. Mark pulled Emily closer and whispered the part she feared most. "It said your name before I ever mentioned you." Emily's hands shook as she clutched Mark's arm. The shadow outside the door shifted, stretching impossibly tall. Its presence pressed against the walls like thick fog. Mark whispered rapidly, trying to form a plan. "We have to get out before it finds a way in." Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She tried to steady her breathing, despite the panic. The growl outside grew louder, scraping against the doorframe. A shiver ran down her spine. Sharp and electric. Mark pointed toward a narrow stairwell behind the crates. "We can escape through the basement," he said. Emily hesitated, fear anchoring her feet to the floor. The shadow tapped the door once, slow and deliberate. Her heart jumped as if it had its own pulse. Mark grabbed her hand firmly, pulling her forward. The stairwell smelled of mold and rusted metal. Each step creaked under their weight like a warning. Emily's phone vibrated again in her pocket. She pulled it out to see another message from the unknown number. "Running won't help. It knows where you are." She swallowed hard, shoving the phone back. The stairwell ended at a dimly lit basement hall. Old pipes dripped water onto the cracked concrete. Shadows pooled in the corners, twisting unnaturally. Mark moved cautiously, holding his hand near the wall. Emily followed, every nerve on fire. A low whisper echoed from the far end of the basement. "Emily, I see you." Her stomach twisted, and her legs felt like lead. Mark stopped suddenly, holding up a finger. He motioned toward a small door, partially hidden behind shelves. "It leads outside," he whispered urgently. Emily squeezed his arm, relief mixed with terror. They crept toward the door, silent as the air around them. Suddenly, a heavy crash echoed from above. Something fell, rattling pipes and dust across the floor. Emily yelped, but Mark hushed her instantly. The shadow's voice hissed from the darkness above. "Don't leave me behind, Emily." Mark kicked the door open slowly, peeking outside. The alley beyond was empty, silent except for distant traffic. He stepped out first, dragging Emily behind him. The cold night air hit her face like a slap. She gasped, blinking away the sudden panic. Mark grabbed a nearby dumpster to hide behind briefly. The shadow appeared at the stairwell opening, impossibly thin. Its glowing eyes scanned the alley like twin lanterns. Emily froze, unable to breathe or move. Mark whispered sharply, pulling her toward a side street. They ran, feet slapping wet pavement, hearts pounding. The shadow didn't chase immediately, but its presence lingered. Emily's phone buzzed again with another chilling message. This is only the beginning. She shivered, knowing the words were not empty threats. Mark kept glancing over his shoulder as they ran. The city lights ahead promised safety, but Emily doubted it. Every shadow now felt alive, watching their every step. Her mind raced, wondering how it knew them. They disappeared into the larger streets, but Emily felt the eyes following. The night was far from over, and something deadly waited. Mark whispered, "We need help somewhere safe." Emily nodded silently, too shaken to speak. The darkness around them pulsed like a living heartbeat. And Emily knew the terror had only just begun. Emily and Mark ducked into a narrow alley between two closed shops. The city lights above felt distant and unreachable. Their breaths came in sharp, uneven bursts. Mark pulled out his phone, checking for any messages. The unknown number had sent another warning. "Stop running, it will find you anyway." Emily's stomach twisted at the words. She shook her head, trying to push the fear away. Mark whispered, "We need a plan, not panic." She nodded, wiping sweat from her forehead. They moved quietly, sticking to the shadows. Every sound of footsteps or distant voices made them flinch. Emily kept glancing over her shoulder. Nothing appeared yet, but the sense of being watched lingered. They turned a corner and froze. A figure blocked the end of the alley. It was tall, thin, and moved unnaturally. Mark grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her back. The figure tilted its head, studying them silently. Emily tried to make herself small, hoping it wouldn't notice. Mark whispered, "We have to get past it slowly." They edged sideways, careful not to make a sound. The figure didn't move, but its glowing eyes followed them. Suddenly, it hissed, a sharp sound that cut the night. Emily stumbled backward, her foot hitting a loose brick. The noise echoed, and the figure twitched violently. Mark yanked her forward, and they ran toward the street. The city lights grew brighter with every step. Emily's chest burned, but adrenaline pushed her forward. They reached a busy street, hoping the crowd would hide them. Mark grabbed her hand, weaving through people quickly. Emily kept her head low, trying not to draw attention. Her phone buzzed again, another message waiting. "It's closer than you think." She froze, staring at the screen in disbelief. Mark glanced at her, fear evident in his eyes. They needed somewhere safe, anywhere to regroup. A nearby café had its lights on, empty except for the night cleaner. They slipped inside, doors clicking softly behind them. Emily's hands trembled as she sank into a chair. Mark scanned the room, looking for exits. The unknown number sent yet another message. "Safe places are illusions." Emily shivered, realizing the words were true. The cleaner looked up, startled by their sudden appearance. Mark whispered a quick explanation, motioning for silence. They stayed in the corner, watching the street through the windows. Emily's mind raced, trying to understand what they were facing. The shadow outside had not followed them here. Yet its presence was felt, lingering at the edge of reality. Mark took a deep breath, whispering urgently, "We need to find someone who knows about this." Emily nodded, her hands shaking violently. The street outside was calm, but they didn't trust it. Every instinct told them the danger was still near. Emily's phone buzzed again, the last message chilling her blood. "Time is running out, Emily." She swallowed hard, knowing the night had only grown darker. Mark squeezed her hand, silently urging courage. They sat together, planning their next move carefully. Every shadow on the street seemed alive, watching, waiting. The danger was real, and they were far from safe. Emily and Mark left the café cautiously, blending into the dimly lit streets. Every corner seemed to hide unseen eyes, watching their every move. Her phone buzzed again, another ominous message from the unknown number. "It's closer than you think, don't look back." Emily shivered, her fingers clutching Mark tightly. He whispered, "We have to find someone who understands this." They moved quickly toward an old library at the edge of the city. The streets felt unnaturally quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Emily kept glancing over her shoulder, expecting the shadow to appear. They entered the library, the heavy doors creaking ominously behind them. Inside, it smelled of dust and old books, comforting yet eerie. Mark led her to the back, where a small office remained lit. A man sat behind the desk, reading, as if expecting them. Emily noticed strange symbols etched into the desk and walls. The man looked up, his eyes sharp and knowing. "You've encountered it," he said, voice low and calm. Emily nodded, unable to speak at first. Mark explained everything in quick, halting sentences. The man listened carefully, his expression unreadable. "It's not human," he finally said. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. "It feeds on fear, on attention. It learns from you." Mark's face turned pale as he listened. Emily's hands trembled, clutching her backpack straps. The man handed them a small, worn notebook. "These are the ways it can be slowed," he explained. Emily opened it, pages filled with sketches, notes, and warnings. Mark read aloud, pointing at the diagrams. "Symbols, lights, noises, anything that distracts it temporarily." Emily felt a spark of hope, small but real. The man continued, "But it always finds a way back if you linger too long." Emily's heart sank at his words. They asked if it could be destroyed. He shook his head slowly, solemnly. "Not destroyed, only delayed, only outsmarted for a time." Emily felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Mark's jaw tightened as he clenched his fists. They studied the notebook, memorizing symbols and patterns. The library clock ticked loudly, marking time they didn't have. Emily's phone buzzed again, a fresh message waiting. "This library will not protect you." Her stomach twisted as fear surged anew. Mark closed the notebook with a snap, determination in his eyes. "We have to use this knowledge, now." Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. They moved toward the exit, ready to face whatever awaited outside. The night air was colder than before, heavier, and filled with dread. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching toward them with intent. Emily clutched the notebook, Mark beside her, as they stepped into darkness. The unknown waited, patient and relentless, beyond every street corner. And Emily realized that survival would demand more than courage. It would demand cunning, knowledge, and the willingness to confront terror head-on. Every step carried them closer to the shadow, closer to answers. And the city around them felt like a trap closing silently, inevitably. Emily and Mark moved cautiously through the abandoned streets, notebook clutched tightly. Every shadow seemed to pulse and stretch, alive with unseen intent. Her phone vibrated violently, another chilling message from the unknown number. "It knows your plan. Act carefully." Emily shivered, gripping Mark's hand. They reached an old warehouse at the edge of the city. Its doors hung loosely on rusted hinges, groaning as they pushed them open. Inside, darkness swallowed them almost completely. Mark held the notebook high, referencing the symbols and notes. Emily followed his lead, scanning every corner for movement. A low, guttural hiss echoed from the far side of the warehouse. Her pulse quickened, every instinct screaming danger. Mark whispered, "Stay quiet, move slowly." They tiptoed across the cracked concrete floor, careful not to disturb dust. A faint glow emanated from the shadows, shifting and twisting unnaturally. Emily's breath caught as the glow formed into the figure of the shadow. Its eyes gleamed like coals, fixed on them with hungry intent. Mark raised a small, carved talisman, repeating the protective symbols. The shadow recoiled slightly, as if burned by unseen fire. Emily felt the air thicken around her, oppressive and suffocating. She held her breath, eyes darting between the figure and Mark. The shadow hissed, advancing slowly with deliberate movements. Emily remembered the notebook, the instructions for distraction. She grabbed a metal pipe and banged it against the wall. The noise echoed, drawing the shadow's attention for a brief moment. Mark whispered more incantations, guiding the symbol's power. The shadow recoiled again, shrieking with a sound that made Emily's ears ring. She banged another pipe, keeping its focus away from them. The warehouse floor rattled under the force of the shadow's movements. Emily stumbled, but Mark grabbed her just in time. They worked together, alternating between distraction and symbols. The shadow writhed, twisting and shifting in anger. It hissed, a long, drawn-out sound filled with malice. Emily's hands shook, but she continued banging objects loudly. Mark moved carefully, chanting symbols from the notebook with precision. Sweat poured down her face as the shadow lunged unpredictably. They dodged and circled, keeping its attention divided. The talisman glowed faintly in Mark's hand, pulsing with strange energy. Emily realized they were holding it at bay, not defeating it. The shadow screeched, furious at their interference. Mark's voice grew louder, stronger with every repeated symbol. Emily banged one final time, shattering a nearby crate. The shadow shrieked, retreating slightly, hissing in frustration. Mark grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a side exit. Emily followed, heart pounding, sweat stinging her eyes. The warehouse doors slammed behind them with a final, echoing thud. Outside, the night air felt colder but safer, shadows retreating slightly. Emily gasped, finally able to breathe without constant fear. Mark squeezed her hand, relief flickering in his eyes. They knew the shadow wasn't gone, only delayed for now. But for the first time tonight, they had survived together. The city remained dark and waiting, but Emily felt a spark of hope. They stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. And in the distance, a faint hiss reminded them the terror had not ended. Emily and Mark walked cautiously through the empty streets, hearts still pounding. The city felt quiet, but every shadow seemed to linger with intent. Her phone buzzed one last time with a cryptic message. "You survived tonight, but it remembers you." Emily swallowed hard, gripping Mark's hand tightly. They reached the edge of the city, where lights met darkness. Mark looked at her, relief and fear mingling in his eyes. "We made it out for now," he whispered. Emily nodded, exhausted but determined. The notebook lay safely in her backpack, a guide for the future. She realized survival meant constant vigilance. The shadow's presence still haunted the corners of her mind. Every step forward required courage, knowledge, and caution. They paused at the bridge, looking back at the city behind them. The night seemed still, almost peaceful for the first time. Emily exhaled slowly, letting a fraction of tension go. Mark squeezed her hand, silent reassurance in the cold air. They continued walking, blending into the dim streetlights ahead. The terror was not gone, but they had learned to fight it. And Emily understood the night had changed them forever. Together, they vanished into the dark, ready for whatever awaited next.